Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power analysis. A huge episode in store for you as Anthony and I are going to be recapping our top 10 interview moments or clips from 2025, really telling of what's to come in 2026. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony absolutely loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're holding any of the companies mentioned and your top pick out of these 10 clips. With that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, guys, away we go. Thursday afternoon. This is an interesting video. Unlike any we've done before, we're going to be taking a look at our top 10 interviews from 2025, some of the highlight clips or moments within those interviews and how they kind of set or preface the remainder of the year along with the intro to 2026 here. So should be some exciting developments in the episode. Before we get into it, Anthony, a bit of housekeeping. Bitcoin price itself hovering just over 96, slightly off the highs we saw yesterday, but we'll definitely take it.
Yeah, we will. Bitcoin will do what Bitcoin does. It's a nice rise over the 5 days, and we're hopeful it might break into that 100,000 like we saw most of the last year it achieve. But let's not preempt anything because it can drop at a moment's notice. But I'm happy with the week so far.
As am I. Now, the miners themselves, a bit of a mixed bag today. Nothing too exciting on the board, neither up nor down. Bitzero on the high side of things and white fiber on the other end.
Yeah, not many miners in the green, to be honest with you. It is a mixed bag today, and you think if Bitzero's is performing as well as anything, just under 3% up there, it's a challenging day, and that's probably the maybe not as much to do with the Bitcoin price, but maybe just sentiment and people still not 100% looking to where to invest their money, whether it be in sort of like Bitcoin or anywhere at the moment. So maybe there's some money come off the table in previous weeks, and now people are just waiting for a time when they'll go back into the markets because we've seen a pullback, and we know that because of some of the volumes have been a lot lower than previously. We're a couple of hours into trading. You can see Bitfarms there at sort of 16 million. Well, that was trading a couple of months ago, 100 million plus shares a day. The average has come down now to 67 million, but believe you me, we were seeing 30, 40 million in early trading on that stock there. So it just tells me not as much activity in the market. And like you say, there's a couple of stocks there in the red. Wi-Fi at 9% down today. Soluna just over 6%. But we'll cover Soluna in a second, and we've got an update from them that's really interesting.
Yeah, this one kind of flew under the radar. We often talk about Soluna on the channel. It's one of the smaller, lesser known or followed miners in the space. They came out with a big headline today, partnering with Metro Blocks to unlock 100 plus megawatts of AI HPC compute capacity at Project Caddy. Now, we've heard a few updates on Project Caddy as it relates to Galaxy and some hosting, but this is really a major headline from the company, and we look forward to hosting John hopefully in the next few days to hear more about it.
Yeah, it's interesting on a number of fronts. Obviously, this is a major joint venture, and 100 megawatts of critical IT is significant. If you think about the revenues associated with that, we saw the last part of the jigsaw puzzle for Cipher really when they announced. I think was it 39 megawatts, and that's $80 million a year in terms of revenue. So this could be a significant joint venture for both companies. Now, one thing we know about Soluna is Project Caddy was two phases. It was 83 megawatts each phase. The first phase was generally going to be for the hosting, Bitcoin hosting there, and they already had a client moving their equipment into there, and that was Galaxy, because we know Galaxy, the new owners of the Helios site, they were going to establish that site there as a HPC site, so they need to put the miners somewhere, and Soluna was a good option for them to do that. So that won't take up the whole 83. This 100 megawatts of critical IT suggests that they're going to need around 145 megawatts of power because In Texas, we've been to a number of sites there. We sort of understand about the PUE. In that neck of the woods there, it's usually about 1.45, so probably allowing for an additional extra 45 megawatts of ancillary power to support that critical IT. Suggests they're going to need more than the whole of phase 2. Now, it does go on into the update there and say that the campus is expected to have an expansion supporting more than 300 megawatts of total CIT capacity. Now, there's a lot of wind farms in that area, but also effectively, as we know from having visited the Silverton site there, where Dorothy 1 and 2 are situated, Soluna are also part of the grid as well, so that they can use both off-grid and grid-connected power to enable the continuity of this sort of contract. So this is a great update for Soluna, one that I would have expected to have probably garnered a bit more interest. So part of me is quite surprised as to see the share price pull back today, because this for me is a big deal.
Really is a landmark announcement. And yeah, you compare this to some of the other contracts, quite sizable. Perhaps we just need to hear a tenant or an announcement on the offtake there before we start to see the share price movement. Now, with that being said, we've scoured our interviews. We've now done over 170 C-suite interviews in the Bitcoin mining space, Anthony. We're coming into the new year here about 2 weeks in. We've got Miner Madness up and running, and we thought, why don't we dust off a few of these videos, our top 10 overall videos or interviews by views in 2025, and we can start to talk about some of the key highlights or takeaways that we took from these interviews throughout the year. So first up, in 10th place, this video garnered nearly 5,000 views. This is Patrick Fleury, the CFO of TeraWulf. What caught my attention about this video, Anthony, was this was the first time we actually got to see the ins and outs of the contract negotiation. So this was in relation to the Fluidstack Google deal. And Patrick, of many things, is very transparent, always gives us a great answer. I'll play the clip and then we can get your thoughts.
It's just all a Herculean effort, right? That I would say soup to nuts took 4 to 5 months, and then certainly the last 4 weeks of which was, really intense negotiations.
Yeah, it was a great interview, and you're quite right. These discussions we've mentioned many times on the podcast don't happen overnight. I know retail shareholders want, they want a deal every day of the week, and at the moment, we've seen some great deals in 2025. But believe you me, Patrick highlighted they've been in discussions for 5 months with Fluidstack, and not just normal hours. He was pushing some 20-hour days to get that contract delivered. It's, the size of these contracts. I've worked in finance, I've worked on big contracts, and we're talking thousands of pages in documents that need to be agreed, every line, every dot, every I dotted, every T crossed. And so, once you've got that agreement, and you're at that point then, if you notice, the subsequent contracts took far less. But this was a great update from Patrick to highlight the deal with Fluidstack and then talk about what that deal meant to TeraWulf, and even had the opportunity for the video to sort of compare it with some of the peer contracts that had already been in issue.
He certainly did, yeah. And I like to say hindsight is 2020. It's interesting to look back at this now with all those upsizes with Fluidstack, the JV, and start to think what these CEOs or C-suite were thinking at the time. We've got a great one coming up from IREN talking about Childress in the same vein. Now, number 9, we've got Sam Tabar, CEO of Bit Digital and now White Fiber. This was a pivotal interview for me in the sense that it started to talk about the political adoption, the openness that the Trump family, government, or cabinet now has towards cryptocurrency. Again, we'll play the clip and you can jump in.
That family, back in 2020, they were debanked, and they used crypto as sort of a lifesaver in many ways, because they were basically debanked from financial institutions in many ways. And now what they're doing is this is my guess, but I think I'm right, is that and it's only been 9 months since this administration has been, online, so to speak. What they're trying to do is make sure that crypto is so deep in the DNA of the American financial institution that when this administration is done in 2028, It'll be too big to fail.
Yeah, absolutely right there. We've seen that political stage change. We've actually even been to into the Bitcoin conference at Nashville. We got to be stood about 50 feet away from Trump when he came on the stage and gave an hour's speech in support of Bitcoin. This was prior to the election date, and we know what the results election date has been. And one thing, whether you like the politics or not, if you are interested in Bitcoin and you want to see it improve there, then you've got the right office in it at the moment there to deliver that. And, you know, Sam was obviously cognizant of that there. It's obviously helped the space a lot there. Obviously, during the podcast, he's also talked about, you know, the approval of the ETFs and how that's delivered more adoption there. He's also talked about what they're going to do in their own company there in terms of, you know, separating out the high performance compute to, you know, as a subsidiary, and because the market just wasn't giving Bit Digital any recognition for what they were doing as one company in terms of a mining company that was really focused on delivering HPC. That's now changed now, and they're now focused on delivering staking from their Ethereum pile there, and also delivering some, you know, significant HPC. We know since that podcast they've really gone on to deliver massively in that space.
They have, yeah, that landmark NC1 North Carolina N-scale contract that was really a landmark for them. Now in number 8 spot, we have Kent Draper. He's the COO of IREN. This is an interesting clip. We've talked a lot about the CSP versus Colo model. Interesting to get that perspective from Kent himself.
Most of the hyperscaler conversations tended to go to their preferred contracting method, which was co-location style agreements, but we were, you know, very deliberate in targeting moving up the value stack and positioning the Horizon data centers as being part of a fully integrated GPU as a service offering rather than just, you know, data centers for lease.
Yeah, that was a great podcast with Kent there. We obviously normally get Dan on the podcast there, but when Dan's busy, and believe you me, the amount of things that IREN have been doing over the last couple of years there, getting that hash rate to 50, also focusing on a HPC strategy. It's great to get the commercial officer on and give us a sort of like a real in-depth view of what's happening in terms of the HPC there. Now, Kent was very clear to say they'd had discussions about the co-location deals that many of their peer miners have gone through themselves, but IREN wanted to do something different, and they believe that the strength of their strategy is really in providing this CSP support. And as we know now, since then, they've landed this fantastic deal with Microsoft at the Childress site there. 200 megawatt compute deal, you know, utilizing, 76,000 GPUs, at a cost of $5.9 billion. So this is the challenge that, I see IREN face, but believe you me, they don't go in things half measured. They tend to deliver. They prove that through their mining. So if anyone wants to think they're not going to make this work, think again. I remember when they came into mining at half an exahash and then finished at 50 exahash in less than sort of like 3.5 years. Amazing speed and growth in that period there. I expect them to do well in the HPC strategy as well. And believe you me, they may have given away 10-11% of their power at the moment, but they still got the best part of 90% to allocate, and they may well decide that some of the locations that they have coming online in the next year or two may be more suitable for co-location.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see kind of the hybrid or best of both worlds there. So stay tuned. We may have a few more clips from IREN coming up. In number 7 spot, Eric Jackson. So this video got around 6,000 views. Eric has been very vocal on Twitter over the past 18 months, talking about companies like Opendoor, Cipher, IREN. This clip was interesting, Anthony, because he specifically talks about the way that they value some of these companies and where this $82 price target on Opendoor came from. Interesting for us, we get to mingle with a lot of these kind of investment grade, hedge fund, institutional type of folks, and really like getting the perspective of Wall Street compared to the retail lens here.
I came out with an $82 price target, and that was derived from like you can't use price earnings or EV to EBITDA with Carvana or with Opendoor because they haven't been making money. So it's kind of, it's just, you get nothing. So instead I used forward price to sales
as kind of the multiple. And what you saw with Carvana is that, in the 2020 when rates went to zero, it was something like a 6x forward price to sales, got compressed down when people thought it was going to go bankrupt to 0.5x forward sales in 2022. And now it's sort of, come out, shown that it can be profitable as a business.
Yeah, Eric was great to come on the channel there, and it was great to offer his time up to give us an insight into this. Remember, he was the sort of like the main really flag bearer for Open Door, and I'm going to say, and not many people I know there can move a share price, but we've got a couple of speakers on this list who certainly have done in the last 12 months. Eric's one of those with Open Door. He's been raising a flag for a long time out there, and he was highlighting, the fact that, when you look at Open Door there, you can't use traditional metrics to come up with a valuation. He was looking at the forward share price over total sales as a metric that he would use to consider where the potential growth was in this company. And $82 as a target there. I think the share price today is probably around about between $6 and $7. But believe you me, when Eric was waving that flag, it was in the 50 cents range. And I know you and me also sort of like took a little bit of a nibble at that price target there, and managed to do quite well out of the share. But a great podcast there. And great to see Eric give us his insights into some of the stocks he's focused on at the moment.
One thing I'll say about Eric Jackson, in terms of conviction, I don't know how many days he stood outside of Drake's house in Toronto holding the Open Door sign, but it went on for over 100 days at least. Now, next up on the list, you talk about the ability to move share price. Maybe no one can do that better than Mike Alfred. He's been a big advocate of a lot of the companies we cover, also involved with Bakkt, Asset or Strive Asset Management. In this clip, we were fortunate to host Mike Alfred. He talks specifically about Cipher and shouts out the management team in terms of their ability to execute. So I'll let you guys take a look at this one, but another strong interview on the channel.
There's one dark horse that we haven't talked about, which is Cipher. I know they're in the news now, but I've been pretty supportive of that company this cycle. And part of that stems from just having met with all the management teams, right? I've met the management teams of pretty much all these companies, spent time with them, as you have over the last few years. And my takeaway from that is that from a risk standpoint, my view from the beginning of the cycle is Cipher is the lowest risk. Minor part of that comes from the management philosophy around capital allocation and shareholder returns. And part of it stems from their conservative nature of locking in low cost power. Like they got fixed cost power at Odessa, for example.
Yeah, a great interview. And like you say, he's met the management teams and we've done exactly the same. We've been with the management teams for a few years. I've been with them for a few years longer. I was covering them for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So you get those insights and understanding, and you get a bit more sort of colour to the picture. But yeah, great interview.
Yeah, that was excellent. We've seen Tyler Page talk in a few different conferences over the years. This was really interesting. Mike and Tyler have been talking about the fact that they plan to have deals on the horizon. That's now come to fruition, and these guys are still just as adamant. We heard from Tyler Page at the Needham Growth Conference. They expect to be signing 1 to 2 deals per year moving forward. So that rounds out the bottom 5, I suppose, of the top 10. The next one goes back to Daniel Roberts, CEO or co-CEO of IREN. This one talks about the Childress client hunt, some of the negotiations, and a precursor for what we've now seen with Microsoft.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're in active negotiations with multiple customers. I mean, both in relation to Horizon, but also variations of Horizon, variations of our design, everything from turnkey delivery for their own design through to powered shells. So there is a broader conversation that encompasses the whole of Childress as well as Sweetwater bundled up in this. But to zero in on Horizon specifically, sitting here today, I'm highly confident we're going to contract that prior to completion in Q4.
Yeah, another good interview from IREN. This time with the CEO Dan, and we can see what's happened at Childress there. Obviously, they achieved the 50 exahash in a time frame they were working to, and then they've obviously started to build out Horizon 1, 2, 3, and 4. and then announced that deal in the same time frame that he was acknowledging. He said we get a client by the end of the year, and they delivered on that as well. So, as I said in the podcast there, you want to doubt IREN, look at their track record. It's pretty good. Now, the thing about Childress, obviously, Microsoft are in there. They've got probably 300 megawatts supporting that contract there. It's a 750 megawatt site. That means they're going to have to start shifting some of those mining machines out come the end of the crossover to HPC, because they need about 650 megawatts to deliver the 40 exahash at the Childress site there. And that would only leave 100 megawatts over, where we've already anticipated that there's going to be 300 megawatts at least. And believe you me, if you think Microsoft are accepting another client going onto that site there, think again. We couldn't go anywhere near inside and take photographs of the internal buildings, and there was nothing inside them. So that just gives you an indication of what security is going to be like. I anticipate that Microsoft will probably increase the size at the site there, and you'll see the mining site move to another location, or effectively maybe the machines get sold on and IREN focus on delivering HPC with all their power. That wouldn't be a bad idea, because we're talking about revenues now being more predictable, the volatility of Bitcoin price. Nobody knows what's going to be tomorrow, next month, or next year, but these contracts are looking a lot more predictable in terms of revenues on a yearly basis. And also, when you've got predictable revenues, you can start adding predictable costs to it as well, and get sort of an idea of what your margins are going to be. And believe you me, these contracts that have been announced, most of the miners have been extremely transparent in delivering what they anticipate as their margins. And most of them are in that sort of 70 to 99% range. So it's pretty good when you compare that to what the companies are now achieving in terms of Bitcoin mining. I remember when I came into this space in 2020, 2021, a lot of the miners were able to achieve a gross margin of over 80% in Bitcoin mining. No more of them the days, because as we know, difficulty, a halving, Bitcoin price, they've all affected how much production these miners are getting. And also, when you're producing less Bitcoin, you're producing potentially less revenue. So it's great to see that IREN are utilizing, their power in the best way to deliver the best return on investment. And this is something that the shareholders, and believe you me, there's a lot of retail shareholders out there owning IREN now, especially over this last sort of 12 to 18 months. That's what they want to see too.
Yeah, and very interesting to hear Dan talk about the potential client that was looking for all of Sweetwater and Childress. We'll see if that ends up being Microsoft or not, but interesting again to look back with this 2020 vision. Now we have Eric Jackson making a second appearance on the top 10 here. This is our fourth most viewed video in 2025 in terms of interviews. We just talked about Cipher. We just talked about IREN. Eric Jackson brings both of these up. Interestingly enough, his firm, EMJ Capital, they use AI to screen stocks. This clip talks about hunter bagger opportunities, essentially what he found with Carvana, and he identifies Cipher and IREN as the first two of these hunter bagger potentials.
What I call 100x opportunities. And the two companies out of the chute, just by luck, that sort of, hit my radar and hit the radar of our AI was IREN and Cipher. And then I started trying to bone up as much as I could about them by watching you guys on this channel and you teaching me, because you're so, down the rabbit hole with them and everything else you cover, is a really great resource for me. I mentioned them. That got some attention.
Well, I'm hoping he comes good on those, because they're both in my portfolio and they have been for a long time. I've been fortunate to sort of to buy into the IREN stock when it was in its lows. I remember picking this up in 2023 when it was literally at its lows there, just over $1 a share. But you could have gone and bought IREN not too long before this podcast, when it was $5.13 back in April 2025. And then we saw that massive ramp up. That was a 16 bagger. By the time it got to September, the middle of September, when the share price hit nearly $80 a share, that was 16. But here, Eric talks about Cipher and IREN being potentially 200 baggers. Now, again, with Cipher, A lot of people out there were picking Cipher shares up, even in 2025, as low as the $2 mark. And we saw that rally to well over $23, $24. So again, talking about a 12x. I mean, people talk about 10x as being a phenomenal jump. And it is a phenomenal jump. If you were to try and get 10x from your bank interest, you'd have to be about 10,000 years old to achieve that, and it's just not going to happen. But in stocks and shares, you can, on occasions, do get shares that do get to like a 10x. But Eric here talks about 100 bagger. That's 10 times a 10x, and he's very convinced that a number of stocks, and he's seen it happen before. He thinks that IREN and Cipher can join them. I'm certainly sort of like hoping alongside Eric that they do, and I'll be monitoring it very, very closely.
Yeah, we both will there. Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting. Our top 3 interview clips or views from 2025. In third place, we have Ben Gagnon. Once again, this video got over 8,000 impressions or views on YouTube. You start to think about how many people go to a conference. 8,000 is pretty impressive. For me, the standout of this, really, we've seen a number of these type of slides, a number of these type of discussions, talking about, is AI a bubble? Is infrastructure a bubble? Is power a bubble? This is really the first time Ben came on, put that to bed, making a statement that infrastructure is not a bubble and they're pushing ahead full steam. What you're seeing from your level in terms of demand, and maybe why it isn't the best idea to go out and sign the first deal possible in this space.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, Bryce, because this is kind of the key question that I think, all of these companies are facing. We're at like a very early inning here for this new wave of compute. And, it kind of goes back to like the parallel would be before Google was really a search engine. You were searching with like Dogpile and Ask Jeeves, and, there wasn't really a proper way to search for content on the pages before Google came around and actually started crawling the pages and caching all this information. Now AI is like completely rewriting the rules of how humans interact with computers.
Yeah, another great video from Ben Gagnon. We never get disappointed when we get him on the channel. There is probably for me one of the best speakers out there. I've been to, many conferences over the last 4 or 5 years. And when Ben speaks, you can see the audience reaction. Everybody listens to him. I've seen him across in Europe. He's been, on conferences in Amsterdam, in London, and obviously, close to home in the US and Canada. But he's quite right here. This infrastructure is not a bubble. And, he's not the only one who's saying it. We've heard it from Dan Roberts as well. The growth in requirements is just absolutely phenomenal. There's just not enough power out there to meet the demand. So, the great thing about companies out there like the mining companies is they do have power. And so Ben, as probably one of the OGs in the Bitcoin mining space, remember before he was CEO, he was the chief mining officer of Bitfarms. And before the chief mining officer of Bitfarms, he was mining himself on his own in Hong Kong. He was there in the very, very early days of mining. So we can class Ben as an OG in the space. In terms of the fact that he's seen the writing on the wall regarding Bitcoin mining, I think he was the first, or maybe following Sam Tabar. Sam's never been as impressed with Bitcoin mining as Ben, but Ben highlighted that he felt there wasn't too many years left in Bitcoin mining, and from their perspective, maybe the next halving is potentially going to kill some of the public miners because of the fact that they're struggling now to make a reasonable margin to cover all their costs. What's it going to be like when revenues get cut by 50% in just over 2 years' time? The other point is that they had operations in South America, and they've decided now to literally focus all their attention on delivering sites there. They bought a company called Stronghold Mining as well in 2025. And that company had, a number of sites, and we'll talk more about that shortly. But really, Ben's sort of trajectory now is really to look at the power they have and deliver that best return. And from his perspective there, the best return is likely to come from the HPC AI space.
Yeah, I think he's definitely onto something with that one. Now, moving into the second position, Dan Roberts, once again from IREN, garnering over 10,000 views on this video or interview. This one was when they first started talking about the NVIDIA preferred status and really started thinking about this CSP model seriously based on some of the financing rates they could achieve.
It's been a testament to the work internally that the guys have been doing, working with NVIDIA, particularly over the last few months. We've obviously scaled up our AI cloud 5 times since the start of this financial year, which is started last month, July. So we've had a lot of conversations with NVIDIA. We're working with them around integration into Lepton and their cloud. We've had the opportunity to show them our capabilities and show them where we're going, both in terms of the technical capability today, but the roadmap as to where we want to go. So
yeah, and he's quite right. I mean, end of the day, that contract with Microsoft there, they've managed to get effectively a loan, an interest-free loan from Microsoft, 1.9 billion Microsoft are going to pay up in advance. That'll be covered during the period of the contract. The contract is 5 years. The infrastructure that they're building to deliver Horizon 1 to 4 is going to last longer than 5 years. So when people think about, the cost of delivering the next contract, effectively, they'll already paid for the facility. So then it's more about just paying for the GPUs. And that's if they have to replace GPUs at the 5 year. I think with Dan here, he's hopefully thinking that they may be able to eke some more time out of these GPUs. They're buying sort of like, obviously, the latest GPUs to go into the Children's facility there. They're buying 76,000 of them to deliver this contract. As I said before, they don't go into things very lightly. They tend to, look at their business. I mean, Dan's got a 20-year background in building infrastructure and understands a lot about infrastructure, about assets like that. They wouldn't have gone into this very lightly. He highlighted the fact that, even before they were a Bitcoin mining company, that he could see in the future that, data centers were probably the place where, power would be required to deliver future technologies. He could see that 6-7 years ago. And so having this preferred status with NVIDIA enables them to get, products on a timely basis and obviously get the best products available and have that relationship should they need, to change any products as well, because we know that in the Bitcoin mining space, the likes of Bitmain, things don't always go well with machines when they reach locations, and not everyone works well. But if you've got that preferred status, I'm sure the relationship's really good, and they'll be able to do any necessary changes required. But it's a fantastic deal at the Children's site there, and we're just anticipating what he's going to do with the rest of his 89% of power available.
Yeah, that's the billion-dollar question, I guess, so to speak, but very strong interview. And again, we look forward to hosting Dan for the next round of interviews coming up shortly here. Now, top spot of the year. This was close between Dan and Ben Gagnon. Ben Gagnon snuck ahead. This is another great clip, more so focused on the sites and kind of that first mover advantage theme that we've talked about. We've seen, as you say, Anthony, some landmark deals in 24 and in 25, really kicked off the entire industry. But some companies like Bitfarms, for example, feel like these returns could get even better if they hold out a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think over the last couple of weeks, there's been a huge explosion in interest in Pennsylvania for good reason. This is a big energy state. It's very pro-business. And, for a purple state, surprisingly, there's a lot of alignment around kind of questions around data centers, energy, and economic development, even across the aisle.
Yeah, and they've just made some announcements, recently about, what their plans are going forward. And it sort of suggests that, they're likely to maybe, get a client deal in the later part of 2026 and giving them then sufficient time to deliver and start receiving revenues by the end of 2027. This ties in exactly what Ben was talking about in the podcast there. Don't want to rush out and get the first deal on the table. Many of these miners will have probably received deals already, but they're probably, waiting for the right deal to come along there, because they can see, and Ben knows this, the power is going to be the bottleneck, followed by the actual infrastructure itself. If everyone wants to build data centers, you're gonna have to make sure there's enough experts out there that can deliver that, and they've already tied in with a company called T5 to help them deliver that. So I would anticipate there being discussions now, and if it's anything like discussions that Patrick alluded to in his podcast. These can take 5-6 months and not the weekend or 3 days that retail investors are hoping they get delivered. You want to make sure you get the best return for your shareholders, and we'll be making sure that when Ben does sign these contracts, that those returns highlight it was well worth the wait, because obviously at the moment the market probably wasn't as sort of like overbearing on the fact that when they announced this week about the timeframes, I think people were expecting maybe they would have heard something maybe in the early part of 2026. But if they're going to get the best deal, will the wait be worth it? We'll be monitoring that very closely.
Yeah, and you're referring to that Needham Growth Conference presentation this week. Not a ton of urgency sensed in terms of signing a deal, more so looking at that longer term financing and bringing these closer to that NTP or notice to proceed status, as we heard from the COO and CFO. So that rounds out our top 5, Anthony. You can see in first place, Ben Gagnon, followed by IREN, Bitfarms once again, Eric Jackson, and then IREN. It's pretty clear to see where retail sentiment is at. But as you can tell, there's a lot of alpha contained in these interviews and really do set the stage for future catalysts or developments. Now, we've linked each one of these videos in the comment section below. These are obviously great teasers, but we encourage you guys to go in and take a look at some of these heavy-hitting podcasts or interviews in preparation, I guess, for Q1 that's just around the corner. The final piece we wanted to bring up more on the macro level here. The Senate Banking Committee has canceled today's vote on the crypto market structure bill. We've actually got a tweet here from the CEO of Coinbase. Sounds like there's a few potential sticking points. Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, not willing to give into.
Yeah, he's actually reviewed the draft of this, and bear in mind he was actually at the president's request brought onto the team there to overview these types of bills. But he's had to review it over the last 48 hours, and unfortunately Coinbase have pulled their support from the bill as it's currently written. And he's basically saying now there's quite a number of issues, and they include effectively a de facto ban on tokenized equities, DeFi prohibitions giving the government unlimited access to your financial records and removing your right to privacy, erosion of the CFTC's authority, stifling innovation and making it subservient to the SEC, and the draft amendments that would kill rewards on stablecoins, allowing banks to ban their competition. So, basically there's some real sticking points there, and he accepts that, there's a lot of hard work by the members have gone into this to reach a bipartisan outcome, because bear in mind, one side of the of the House haven't got enough votes to vote in. So it does need a number of both sides to get this across the line, and they've been working together to get that. But he still feels basically we're just a couple of steps away from where they need to be. So maybe, hopefully they can go back and review this. Brian obviously hopes that, Coinbase will continue to fight for Americans and for the economic freedom. Crypto needs to be treated on a level playing field with the rest of financial services so we can build this industry into a safe and trusted way in America. And I wholeheartedly agree with him.
I do too. I almost would have expected a bit more of a pullback in Bitcoin and some of these proxies today based on this, but glad to see progress is still moving forward. It's that huge battle, I guess, between TradFi or traditional finance and DeFi or decentralized finance coming to fruition. So looking back on 2025, Anthony, nearly 170 interviews completed to date on the Power Analysis platform. We've highlighted some of the top moments or clips throughout the year. I'll give you a final thought as we move into 2026 and our round of Q1 interviews.
Yeah, there's a great bunch of interviews there. They were the top 10 from an interview perspective. They weren't the top 10 podcasts, believe you me. Actually, a lot of you quite like the podcast that Bryce and myself do together. And probably the reason for that is we cover more than one miner. So you're all going to have your favorites out there. There'll be a lot of people, obviously, who like the IREN, they like Cipher or Bitfarms, they like Mara, Riot, across all the mining companies. And we'll do podcasts some days where we're covering 7 or 8 of them. So that might attract more people watching our podcast than an individual interview. And maybe, if we have a good response to this one here, we maybe do the top 10 of our podcast, just to give you an indication of what really worked when me and Bryce sat down and had our general discussion there. But some of these figure in sort of like high up there, but certainly not at the top. You quite like the way we do things, and hopefully we'll continue to do that and give you that news update on a daily basis that you so much enjoy watching.
Certainly will. Yeah, there's another idea for a podcast coming your guys' way. Take a second, you guys, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. Let us know in the comment section below which was your top interview from Power Analysis in 2025, or top miner CEO interview. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll of course see you back here tomorrow.